This was not a wedding built on love, not at first. It was a moment forced by fear, by survival, and by a world that did not care what Claire wanted. Yet, in that quiet space, something unexpected began to grow. What happens when two strangers are bound together and a simple vow changes everything? Claire's journey to this moment was never meant to happen. She came from another time, a world of safety and familiar rules. But suddenly she was thrown into a place where danger lived in every shadow. In the Scottish Highlands, nothing was certain. Trust was rare, and survival often meant making choices she never expected to make. When she met Jamie, he was not just a man, but someone shaped by the harsh world around him. He carried both strength and quiet pain, and he understood the risks better than anyone. Their marriage was not born from romance. It was arranged a way to protect Claire and keep her safe from those who would harm her. But even in this forced situation, there was something neither of them could ignore. A strange sense of respect began to form. Jamie did not treat Claire like a possession. He listened. He noticed. He gave her space to be herself, even when the world expected her to follow strict rules. Claire, in return, did not submit without thought. She questioned, she observed, and she slowly began to see that Jamie was not just another man of this time. He was different. Their first moments together were filled with hesitation. They were two people stepping into the unknown, unsure of what the future would bring. Yet, in that uncertainty, something powerful started to form. Not love yet, but the foundation of it. A quiet understanding that would soon turn into something far deeper. Before the vows were ever spoken, there was a quiet storm building between Claire and Jamie. The days leading up to the wedding were not filled with joy or celebration. Instead, there was tension in every glance, in every word left unsaid. Claire knew this marriage was not a choice she would have made in her own time. Yet here she was, stepping into a life that felt completely new to her. She had no control over how she arrived at this point, but she still held on to the only thing she truly owned, her voice and her sense of self. Jamie, on the other hand, carried a different kind of weight. For him, this marriage was not just about protection. It was about responsibility, honor, and doing what was right in a world that demanded strength from him every single day. He understood what was expected of him as a man in his time. Yet, when he looked at Claire, something shifted. She was not like the women he was used to. She challenged him in ways he did not expect, not with anger, but with honesty and courage. This made him think differently, even if he did not fully understand why. As the wedding day approached, neither of them spoke much about what was coming. There were no grand promises, no soft declarations of love. Only a shared understanding that something important was about to happen, something that could change everything between them. The silence between them was not empty. It was full of questions, of doubts, and of possibilities. Claire wondered if she could ever truly belong in this world. Jamie wondered if this unexpected union could become something more than just duty, in that quiet space where fear and hope met. The stage was set for something far greater than either of them could have imagined, the moment they stepped into the place where the vows would be spoken. The air itself seemed to change. It was not grand or overwhelming, but it carried a quiet weight, as if the world was holding its breath to see what would happen next. Claire walked forward with a steady but careful pace, aware of every step she took. This was no longer just a situation she could walk away from. It was real now, final in a way that could not be undone easily. Around her, the setting felt simple, yet deeply meaningful. Every detail, from the quiet presence of the people to the stillness in the room, added to the sense that something important was about to unfold. Jamie stood there, watching her with an expression that was hard to read. There was strength in the way he held himself, but there was also something softer beneath the surface. He was not just looking at a bride. He was looking at a woman who had stepped into his life in the most unexpected way. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and in that silent exchange, something unspoken passed between them. It was not love yet, but it was something that carried the potential to become it. Claire could sense the difference in Jamie's presence compared to the men she had known before. He was not rushing, not forcing anything. He was simply there, grounded and steady, giving her the space to process everything in her own way. The ceremony prepared to begin, the tension did not disappear. Instead, it settled deeper, turning into a quiet anticipation. This was the moment where everything could change, where two people, brought together by circumstance, would either remain strangers or begin the slow path toward something meaningful. Neither of them spoke, but in their silence they were already beginning to understand each other in ways words could not explain. Asterisk. The ceremony did not begin with loud words or dramatic gestures. It started in silence, the kind of silence that feels heavier than noise. Everyone present seemed to understand the importance of this moment, and even the smallest sound felt meaningful. Claire stood there, her thoughts moving faster than the world around her. This was the moment she had been pushed toward, yet now that it had arrived, it felt more real than she had ever imagined. Jamie stood beside her, calm on the outside, but carrying a quiet intensity within. He was not distracted. He was fully present, as if he understood that what they were about to do mattered far more than the world could see. As the words of the ceremony began, they were not just spoken into the air. They carried weight. Each line felt like a step deeper into a path that neither of them had walked before. Claire listened carefully, aware that this was not just a ritual. It was a commitment, something that would bind their lives together in a way that could not easily be undone. When it was her turn to respond, she did not speak with perfect certainty. Instead, there was honesty in her voice, the kind that comes from someone who is still trying to understand where they truly belong. Jamie watched her closely as she spoke, not interrupting, not rushing her, simply taking in every word. There was something powerful in the way he gave her that space. It showed that this was not just about following tradition, it was about respect. When Jamie spoke his vows, his voice carried a quiet strength, but also a sincerity that was impossible to ignore. He did not try to sound perfect. He spoke as he was, steady and real. In that moment, something subtle shifted between them. The distance that had existed before did not disappear completely, but it began to close just a little. Their vows were more than words. They were the beginning of something neither of them fully understood yet, but both were now a part of. When the vows were spoken, something changed in the air, as if the world itself had paused to take in what's had just happened. These were not just words said to follow a tradition. They were a promise, a binding moment that tied the lives together in a way that could not be easily undone. Claire felt at first that quiet shift deep inside her. It was not sudden or overwhelming, but it was real. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel what this meant. Not just survival, not just a way to stay safe, but the beginning of something she could not fully name yet. Jamie stood beside her, and there was a different kind of stillness in him now. He was no longer just a man fulfilling an obligation. There was intention in the way he looked at Claire, a quiet recognition that what they had just spoken carried weight beyond the moment. He did not look away, did not hesitate. In his eyes, there was a growing sense of responsibility, not just to the vows, but to her as a person. Claire noticed this. She saw the difference in the way he carried himself now, as if something inside him had shifted just enough to make room for something new. There was no grand declaration, no sudden confession of love. Instead, there was a quieter truth unfolding. Between them, it's the kind that grows slowly, through actions, through presence, through the choice to stay when it would be easier to walk away. As the moment settled, the tension that had filled the space before began to soften. Not disappear, but change. What had once been uncertainty now carried a small sense of trust. A fragile beginning, but still a beginning. In that silence after the vows, they were no longer just two people brought together by circumstance. Were now connected by something deeper, something that had just begun to take shape. Asterisk. After the vows, the world did not suddenly become perfect. There was no loud celebration, no sudden moment where everything turned into a fairy tale. Instead, there was a quiet shift, something small but deeply meaningful. Claire stood there, still trying to understand what had just happened. The words had been spoken, the promise made, but what did it truly mean for her future? For the first time, she felt a small sense of stability in a place that had felt completely uncertain. It was not comfort yet, but it was something close. To it, Jamie, on the other hand, began to show a different side of himself. The seriousness in his expression softened just a little, as if the act of making those vows had opened a door he had not expected. He did not rush away from Claire. He did not treat the moment as something finished and done. Instead, he stayed close, as if recognizing that this was only the beginning of something that would need time to grow. The way he looked at her changed. In subtle ways, it was not dramatic, but it was noticeable. There was curiosity, care, and a growing sense of connection that neither of them could ignore. Claire began to notice this too. She was used to keeping her guard up, especially in a world that was not her own. But something about Jamie made her feel less alone. Not completely safe, not yet, but less isolated than before. In those quiet moments after the ceremony, they were no longer just strangers tied by a forced agreement. They were two people standing at the edge of something new, something that could become strong if given time. The vows had done more than join them legally. They had started to build a fragile bridge between two very different lives, one that would slowly, carefully begin to turn into something real. Looking back at Claire and Jamie's first vows, it becomes clear why this moment still holds such power. It was not the kind of wedding built on perfect love or easy promises. It was born from pressure, from danger, and from a world that forced two people together under difficult terms. Yet, what makes this moment unforgettable is not how it began, but what it became. In that simple exchange of vows, something real started to form. Not a finished love story, but the very beginning of one. Claire, a woman from another time, found herself standing in a place where she had no control, no familiar ground, and no clear future. But even in that uncertainty, she held on to her strength. She did not lose herself, and that is what allowed her to slowly open up to Jamie. Jamie, on the other hand, was not just a man fulfilling a duty. He was someone who chose, in his own way, to honor the woman standing beside him. He did not rush her. He did not force her into anything she was not ready for. Instead, he gave her space, respect, and something even more important: time. This is what makes their vows feel so powerful. They were not perfect. They were not spoken in a moment of pure romance, but they were honest. And sometimes honesty is the strongest foundation of all. That single moment marked the start of a journey that would grow far beyond what either of them expected. A journey filled with challenges, trust, and a connection that would deepen over time. Their first vows were not the end of a story. They were the first step into a life that neither of them could fully see, but both would begin to build together, one moment at a time.